What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our conference championship predictions. And as always, I got Ty joining me here this week to break down this week's biggest games of the year. But before we can talk about this week, we got to talk about last week, rivalry week. Ty, I'll let you have the floor here as you got two games on me last week.
Yeah, a lot of games I kind of saw going the other way with A&M and then with the Tennessee Vanderbilt game. I mean, gotta at least touch on our Wolverines just kind of, not necessarily getting embarrassed, but getting dominated. It was very clear who the better team was for all 60 minutes. So uh, back to the drawing board for us. And, I think it's a real shame for Vanderbilt because I don't think there's any chance they get in, but that was a really impressive win for them to finish the season. And I don't think anyone thought going 10-2 in the SEC with a 12-team playoff would leave you outside of the playoffs. So I think that's really unfortunate. And I think it's gonna, maybe lead to expansion or changing the
Mhm.
way we go about how we pick the 12 teams.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And to piggyback off that, look at Miami. They go into Pitt, supposedly the toughest team they had remaining on their schedule after that Notre Dame game. And they go into the cold and absolutely demolish this team, and they're not going to get rewarded for it. Texas isn't going to get rewarded for beating the number three team in the country. So I'm with you here on the expansion. I've proposed the idea, we've done it on our show, the 24 team at this point. Just take all the major conference players, so then they're getting in, and there's an incentive to get to that game. And then take the maybe best team that didn't make the conference championship, and then you got what, 12 teams right there at the Power Four. Then after that, you can pick from there. So who knows how it's going to be, but it didn't go well last week for some teams, and it definitely didn't go well for us last week in the picks. Not really much to report here for us. The only positive is hopefully you guys checked out my NFL video where I went 6-0 for the picks. So technically breaking even, but for college, it did not go well for either of us last week.
No, a couple swing games for me that went the wrong way with Clemson and Vanderbilt basically dominating those two games, and then I Washington was close for most of that game with Oregon. I thought they'd really give them a run playing at home, but Oregon just showing that they're right up at the top of teams that could win the national championship, and SMU golden opportunity. And instead, they turned the ACC upside down and they let 7-5 Duke into the ACC championship. So, uh, really just a tough loss, not only for SMU, but for the entire ACC conference and for all the teams that were on the bubble potentially to make the college football playoff.
Yeah, and so we'll jump to this week, back to this week. I'm going to go with my locks. We're going to go Kennesaw State plus 2.5 versus Jackson State. JMU, I'm with you on this one. I think they just blow the doors off Troy. They've done that all year with any team in the Sun Belt. North Texas, Tulane, I like the over in this one. They already played once this year and it was a high scoring affair, and I like that to be the case again. Then we'll move to Saturday. Western, I think they're going to not, obviously, if they're going to win this game, I think they can cover 1.5, so I like that spread. And I'm going with the SEC championship and the ACC championship over in both those games. UGA, Bama, yeah, they play tough always in the regular season, but it seems like in the SEC championship, when they face each other, it's always, I won't say super high scoring, close to the 30s, and I think both these teams can get there. And it's, I don't even know for the Duke Virginia game, because one week Duke could put up 35 and lose by three, or they're going to put up 10 and get blown out. So I'm just going to roll the dice there on that Duke Virginia game and take the over.
Yeah, I'm throwing all the points out there with James Madison, so I'm going with you there. 23.5 is a lot, but give me every single bit of those points. I think they're going to dominate Troy because they not only need to win that game, they need to blow Troy out to have a chance to get to the college football playoff. So I think they do that. I'm going with North Texas. Everyone's been high on Tulane this year, but then North Texas is favored. Very interesting line. And I think in that type of situation, go with North Texas. Vegas knows something. So I think they cover the 2.5. I'm going BYU and the points this time. I know they got blown out pretty good at Texas Tech earlier in the season. I think this time they're going to have a few more answers. A lot of momentum with them keeping Kalani Sitake this week. So I think they cover that. I'm going with Alabama. I think they win outright. I think they beat Georgia again. Kirby Smart just can't figure out Alabama. And the Tide maybe need this game to make the college football playoff, whereas Georgia is in regardless. So I think Alabama beats them for the second time this year. And I'm going with two favorites in the night slot. I'm going with Ohio State -4. I know it means everything to Indiana, but people don't realize Ohio State, not only did they lose to Michigan last year, they did not win the Big Ten. So they really want to win the conference this year and have a clean slate for their national championship run. And then everyone in the world, it seems like, is on Duke. Everyone thinks there's going to be this two group of five team scenario for the playoff. So I'm going the other way. I'm going with Virginia -4. Duke has been way too inconsistent this year. So I think Virginia beats them a second time and they win the ACC.
And we'll jump to the picks this week. We're going to start tonight. Conference USA, Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State. These two teams just played each other a few weeks ago. It was a close game. And I'm going with Kennesaw State here in this one. And I say that because I feel like Kennesaw State, they've somehow been in our picks for the last month. And I kept picking them.
Yep.
So I'm just going to keep rolling the dice here with Kennesaw State. See if I can get one more before the bowl season starts.
Yeah, I'm going with Jack State here playing at home. Great season for Kennesaw State after winning, I think it was either one or two games last year. So either way, huge turnaround year for them. But unfortunately, I think they come up just short, and I think Jack State wins the Conference USA.
Also at 7 o'clock Eastern, it's going to be the Sun Belt Championship. Troy, like we said, we're obviously both on JMU here in the points. I think they blow the doors off Troy like they have to every Sun Belt opponent this year. And this JMU team, I think somehow, some way, I believe they should be in over North Texas or Tulane, whoever wins, because JMU's just thoroughly dominated their opponents this year in every single game. Their only losses to Louisville week 2, and it was only by 14. And at the
Yep.
time, the first 2 months of the season, Louisville looked untouchable. Um, so give me JMU here to blow the doors off Sunbelt, and this one's also at home as well.
Yeah, I think JMU absolutely waxes Troy. A lot of people think that if Duke beats Virginia, that opens the door because, North Texas is already in. But then it's going to come down to James Madison and Duke, and which team will be the fifth conference champion. A lot of people think Duke might jump JMU, so I think they have every bit of motivation here to just blow out Troy. They need all the style points they can get in preparation for that scenario. So I think that's exactly what they do. I think it's like a 41-14 type of game here, and the Dukes stake their claim for a playoff berth.
And then at 8 o'clock, you got that team we were talking about, that North Texas Tulane game. I'm going with North Texas. This team has just been dominant all year, not getting their flowers. Like we said, somehow, some way, Vegas is favoring North Texas, but everybody's on Tulane. Even the committee thinks Tulane's a better team. And you and me have talked about North Texas pretty much almost every week since October and how they've been dominant and not getting that respect they deserve. I mean, they finally just now cracked the top 25 in the college football playoff ranking, and they're 11-1. So give me, the mean green here to go and beat Tulane.
Yeah, I've been wrong about a lot this year, but I've been on North Texas all year. I was surprised they never really got the love that some other American teams were getting. It seemed like they were fourth or fifth in the pecking order in the conference all year and just kept winning and working themselves back up. They have a dynamic offense. They put up tons of points this year, and I think they keep it going. Like you said, everyone has been on Tulane all year saying that they're the better team, and now all of a sudden, Vegas is on North Texas, and I trust Vegas. So I'm going with the mean green in that dynamic offense. And I think if they win, there's no doubt that they'll be in. Whether people agree with it or not, I think whoever wins this game is guaranteed a playoff spot.
And also at 8 o'clock, so all these games are going to be going on here. So hopefully you got that quad box loaded up. It's going to be the Mountain West Championship. It's going to be UNLV at Boise State. But I think, doesn't the Mountain West play in Vegas now? Or is it at Boise?
I want to say it's at Boise. That's a good question, though.
If it is at Boise, I mean, so be it. They're going to get even more favored as Ty looks that one up here.
Yep.
Um, I like Boise's offense. This team has slowly taken a step back, but somehow, some way, still find themselves in the Mountain West Championship with a down year. So that just speaks volumes to how good this Boise State program is culturally, year in and year out. But you got to give some flowers to Dan Mullen and what he's done at UNLV, going 10-2 first season. I mean, how many games have they won by what? 4 points or less, maybe one
Yep.
possession or less? I think it's been at least half of their wins. So maybe they're a fluky 10-2 team here, but Boise State has the track record of playing well in these big games. So give me the Broncos.
Yeah, confirmed. This is at Boise State, and I think that's all the reason you need. Boise State playing at home in the Mountain West Championship. Feels like we've seen that 10 times before. This team is no stranger to big games, and a lot of people will say, well, that none of those games happened in 2025. Well, uh, some programs, some teams just learn how to win over time, and I think Boise State has continued to prove that. So I think even in a down year for them, they still find a way to win the conference, but the future is bright for UNLV, and I think they'll be back next year. But I think Boise State wins the Mountain West.
And then moving to Saturday, we got your Broncos in Ford Field against Miami of Ohio. It's almost a drive equally the same for both these schools. So there's going to be well represented from both schools. And I like Western here to go. This team has been more often than not. Obviously, what they're doing this year is, I want to say, an underdog story, but a lot of people didn't pick this Western team to get to this point this year. And I think they just keep it rolling, win the MAC for the first time since 2016, and possibly finish with 10 wins on the year.
Yeah, like you said, first time in the MAC championship for Western in 9 years. It was the PJ Fleck 13-0 season. That was their last time there. They've had three opportunities, though, between then and now, where they have been in a win and you're in situation going into their last game. They lost every single time. So it's nice to see my Broncos finally get over the hump, get back to this game. And this was a game that was played earlier in the season. Western dominated for about 50 minutes, and then Miami, Ohio made all the plays late in the game, and they won in Kalamazoo. So I think it's a little bit of a revenge factor here for the Broncos. And I think after finally getting over the hump, they have that monkey off their back, and I think they get out there and they win the MAC for the first time in 9 years, and probably going to Detroit for the bowl game if they win this. So staying home. And I think the Broncos do get to 10 wins.
Also at 12 o'clock for people that like to look at playoff. This is a huge one because if BYU wins this one, they might steal a playoff spot here, possibly. But if they lose this one, more than likely they're out, which I think is jank if you lose twice to the same team that's a top four team. But I think that's going to be the case, unfortunately, for BYU and Kalani Sitake. This Texas Tech offense has just been rolling. The defense possibly have a Heisman winner. I think this would be the year that a defensive player could win it. Just no one's really had that case. And Texas Tech just solidifies their case that they do deserve a bye in the first round of the playoff.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's really unfortunate with BYU. I agree. Because right now they're sitting out of the playoff. And even if they lose really close, I don't see any way they move up in the rankings with a loss. So I think they have to win against a really good Texas Tech team, or they're not going to the playoff, which is unfortunate. I'm going with Texas Tech. Like I said, BYU, I think, covers, but I think Texas Tech ends up winning by about 7-10. But as for the playoff, I think what's going to be really interesting is if Texas Tech blows them out. I'm saying, 38-7, that type of game. Does BYU move behind Miami, who's right behind them? Then you have Notre Dame and Miami right next to each other. You have to put Miami ahead of Notre Dame in that situation because they beat them. So that'll be interesting. But as for the game, I think BYU keeps it a lot closer than the first time around, but the talent will just be too much. And I think Texas Tech beats them for the second time and knocks them out of the playoff.
Then moving to 4 o'clock, you already announced that you switched your pick in this one
I
to
did,
Bama.
yes.
So I'm going with Georgia here. I just think they just keep it rolling. Somehow, some way, Georgia finally gets over the hump of beating Alabama in these big games. And I like Gunnar Stockton to outduel Ty Simpson in this one. Kirby Smart and his boys, I think that they just can't suffer another loss here. Neither can Bama, though, because Georgia wants a bye. And if Bama wins, they're for sure in the playoff. But if they lose, I mean, there's the scenario where they might jump Bama out, throw Miami in there just because of all the debate of the Notre Dame Miami crap. But then you incentivize, then you have to go to expand the playoff after this year. Because why would you even want to go to your conference championship game if you lose? Same for BYU, obviously. So I want to see what the committee does just for that standpoint. So you're going to see why in a few more slides here when I pick some other games. So give me the dogs here to play pretty much a home game in Atlanta to win this game.
Yeah, I'm going with Alabama. I know what the logo says there, but I switched earlier in the week to Alabama, even having beaten them once. Revenge factor for Georgia. I think the Tide do it for a second time this year. And it's not just the fact that Alabama just owns Kirby Smart. I think it's just the fact Georgia has looked really shaky for a lot of the second half of the season outside of the Texas game. So I think that catches up to them. Their defense is not what we typically see out of a Georgia defense. And I think Ty Simpson, for the second time this year, will take advantage of that. But as for the playoff, if Alabama loses, as much as I'm, not an Alabama guy, last year they got left out because SMU did not get punished for losing their title game. So I think you have to do the same. I think win or lose, the Tide have to stay in the playoff. You have to stay consistent. So I think it won't matter because I think the Tide are going to win this game, but I think they should be in either way.
Then moving to 8 o'clock, the best game of the year isn't getting enough love because of that Georgia Alabama game. And I'm going with the Hoosiers because why not? At this point, the season just keeps on going. They've been doubted, till that Oregon game, and then they proved the country wrong, and everyone just accepted that they're a top five team. And then all of a sudden they got to face another top five team, and then everybody's back on Ohio State, and oh, is Indiana really that good? And I believe they are. Kurt Signetti, just Google him. You've taught me that a few times, and I can't pick against him because all he does is win. Fernando Mendoza, I think, might have his Heisman moment in this game, but you could say the same for Julian Sayin. And I think whoever wins this game not only obviously is going to be the number one seed in the college football playoff, but I think the quarterback's going to win the Heisman as well.
Yeah, the only unfortunate thing about the 12 team playoff, because I do love it so far, is that this game, the stakes are not super high because most likely both teams are going to end up with a bye, but it's just going to be an awesome football game to watch either way. I think the common misconception here is that it means way more to Indiana than it does to Ohio State. But like I said earlier, I think Ohio State really wants to win the Big Ten this year. It's something they weren't able to do last year, and I think that really sat with them in the offseason. So I think they want to get that done this time around. And I'm really surprised at the line. I know Indiana, obviously undefeated, been dominant most of the year, but Ohio State just seems to be a step above everyone, including Indiana. So I'm surprised the line is that low. And I picked Ohio State to cover it earlier. So I think the Buckeyes will have their way. I think Indiana keeps it close, maybe for three quarters. But similar to the Michigan game, I think Ohio State will kind of impose their will in the fourth quarter, and I think they pull away late. So I think the Buckeyes win it, but I think Indiana, there's no way they'll fall below four, even with a loss here. So I think they'll still end up with a bye, and Ohio State will be the one seed.
And then for the last game of championship week, we got Duke in Virginia. And I'm taking Duke because I, once again, want to see what the committee does. I'm not going to even analyze this game because I don't really care about it this game, if I'm going to be honest. So I'm taking Duke strictly for the fact because are they going to throw Miami in the championship or in the college football playoff? If Duke wins this game, they leave out James Madison, but they throw the American champion in. And I think that's their plan all along. And they're hoping BYU loses to Texas Tech because if that's the case, they're going to throw Miami in and somehow, some way, they'll, like you said, possibly jump Notre Dame without playing a single game because of the head-to-head and just cause chaos in college football. And next year we have a 16 team playoff because of this. So I want to see chaos because the committee unfortunately care about their preseason rankings too much with that first ranking. Um, and that's where they have their hands tied at this point in the season. So just cause even more chaos and let those guys in that room really have to think twice before they start ranking these teams.
Yeah, the way it's going to come out leading up to this game, I think this is going to be a huge game for James Madison because I think if your scenario comes true and Duke wins, I really hope that it works out where they don't put an 8-5 Duke team in over a 12-1 James Madison. So I think it's a big game for them. However, I think everyone has been on Duke this week, and they leave out the fact that Virginia absolutely dominated Duke the first time these teams played. And I know it's tough to beat a team twice, but I think Virginia's going to do it. Duke's been very inconsistent this year. So I think that finally catches up to them, even after being rewarded somehow with a conference title berth. I think Virginia gets it done, and unfortunately, the scenario everyone seems to want, the chaos scenario, I don't think it's going to play out. I think Virginia ends up as that 11 seed, probably going to get demolished in the first round, but I think the Cavs get it done and win the ACC.
Yeah, and the fact that people are actually thinking Duke might get in is just crazy to me. Being 8-5 if you get in, but we'll jump a whole week in advance here to the best game of the year if you're from America, Army Navy. Um, how can you not love this game? Just a battle of our country going at it. Only game of the week. And I'm going with Navy here. They've been dominant in this series in the last few years. They've been dominant this year, especially last year. Their quarterback has actually thrown the ball. And that's something we don't see. And I think somehow, some way, Navy runs away with this one. Give me the over too while we're at it. Navy's going to put up, I think, almost 28, 31 points in this one, and I think Army can at least put up 10.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's America's game. It's going to be awesome. You know, to an outsider, it's not the most exciting game, but for football guys, it's the best. I mean, just two teams playing the exact same style for the most part, going at it, and it's almost always a very close game. Comes down to late in the fourth quarter, but I think this time around, Navy continues their dominance as of late, and I think Navy gets it done once again.
And that's all we got for you this week for the conference championship predictions and obviously the Army Navy game. And we'll be back with a video next week in between that, the conference championships and the Army Navy game of some breakdowns of some college football news, recruiting, some coaching hires, firings, all that stuff. So just a long video there. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel to see that. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.